I was standing in my own living room at 3 in the morning, holding a duffel bag, when I heard a woman's voice call down from my stairs. "Babe, I heard the door. I think your fiancé's ghost is here." Then she laughed. My neighbor Natasha Harper, from 3 houses down, rounded the corner wearing Michael's oversized shirt, hair messed up, still smiling at her own joke. The smile died the second she saw me standing there in the darkness. Everything after that slowed down, like someone dragged a finger across the timeline of my life and hit half speed. You ever been mocked for your absence in your own home? My name is Summer Davis. I'm 34 years old, I live in Detroit, and I'm an industrial electrician who learned the hard way that the person sleeping in your bed can turn you into a punchline while you're out working to pay for the roof over their head. I'd flown out Friday to meet a potential client, supposed to be back Saturday morning. Before I left, Michael had said, "It's just one night, but I'm gonna miss you." I told him it'd be quick, I'd be back in the morning. Instead, the flight got delayed 3 times, then canceled. I landed at Detroit Metro at 2:30 a.m., exhausted, smelling like recycled airplane air and stale coffee. At the airport, I saw this gourmet bakery near my gate. They had brown butter chocolate chip cookies, the kind you can't find anywhere else, made with real vanilla bean, chunks of dark chocolate, that nutty brown butter taste Michael would have loved. I bought a box and asked them to wrap it for a gift. On the drive home, I kept thinking about surprising him, showing up early with his favorite treat, making him smile. When I got home at 2:55 a.m., I unlocked my front door quietly and stepped into darkness, holding the wrapped box of cookies. I walked through the living room toward the kitchen, and that's when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Then that voice. "Babe, I heard the door. I think Summer's ghost is here." Laughter followed. My stomach dropped. A half-dressed woman I recognized, Natasha Harper, married, 2 kids, regional sales manager at Michael's father's company, my neighbor from 3 houses down, rounded the corner wearing Michael's oversized gray shirt. She was still smiling at her cruel joke when she saw me standing there holding that gift box. Both of us froze. Her face went slack. From upstairs, Michael laughed. "Stop! That's not funny!" Natasha shoved past me and bolted out the front door, running down my sidewalk in bare feet toward her house. I stood there, frozen, breathing, holding cookies I'd bought to surprise him. This was my house, paid in full. And they'd been joking about me like I was already gone. Before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand something. This wasn't just cheating. This was trespassing on the only thing I've truly claimed as mine, and turning me into a joke while doing it. I've been an industrial electrician for 12 years. Started as an apprentice at 22, crawling through 6-inch conduits in 95-degree heat, working 60-hour weeks on jobs where one wrong move could kill you. I studied electrical codes during lunch breaks. 6 years ago, I started Davis Industrial Electric with a beat-up van and built it into a business specializing in industrial automation, programmable logic controllers, servo drives, variable frequency drives. My house, 1,800 square feet, 3 bedrooms, brick exterior, quiet street on Detroit's east side. I bought it 8 years ago for $127,000. I paid it off completely in 8 years. Every single month, I threw everything I had at that mortgage. Every time I logged into my mortgage account and watched the number tick down, it felt like buying myself 1 square foot of freedom at a time. When I made that last payment, I cried in my truck in the bank parking lot for 10 minutes straight. I also bought my truck, $48,000, in cash 2 years ago. No payments, no debt, just mine. This wasn't paranoia. I watched my uncle lose everything in a divorce when I was 19. House, savings, business. He moved into a 1-bedroom apartment and died of a heart attack 3 years later, bitter and broken. I promised myself I would never be that vulnerable. I would own my ground so if disaster came, I could face it standing on something solid. Michael entered my life 4 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding. He worked as an administrative assistant at his father's company, Harper Climate Systems. I'd wired their warehouse 3 years earlier. His father, Robert, was honest, paid on time, treated contractors with respect. Michael seemed like he came from good people. My neighborhood, the quiet residential street where I'd lived for 8 years, felt safe, predictable. About 2 years ago, Natasha and Daniel Harper moved in 3 houses down with their 2 kids. She worked as regional sales manager at Robert's company. He was a doctor at the local hospital. They seemed like the perfect neighbors. I had no idea that 2 years later, Natasha would be standing in my kitchen at 3 a.m. wearing my fiancé's shirt, mocking me as a ghost in my own home. The first 2 years with Michael were good. We spent weekends exploring Detroit neighborhoods, soul food spots on the west side, BBQ joints on the east side, walking through Eastern Market on Saturday mornings. He had this weird talent for predicting killers in true crime documentaries within 10 minutes. He'd bring coffee and coney dogs to job sites and never complained about emergency calls at midnight. We moved in together after 18 months. He proposed a year later with a simple ring and a quiet moment on my back porch. We planned a wedding for the following spring. There was this weekend at his family's cabin up north where we talked about having 2 kids and building a future together. Sitting there with his head in my lap, firelight flickering across his face, it felt like something you could build a life on. Around the same time, Natasha and Daniel moved in 3 houses down. They seemed solid. Friendly waves, borrowed tools, kids playing in the yard. Everything felt like it was falling into place. Classic mistake, right? Thinking you can pause a relationship and hit play later without losing the plot. 8 months before the ghost incident, I landed a $340,000 contract to rewire an entire manufacturing facility with a $15,000 early completion bonus. It required 70-hour weeks, sometimes sleeping in my truck at the job site. I thought I could pause the relationship and resume after the project. Michael started going out more. Guys' nights until 2 a.m., hanging out with his ex-girlfriend Vanessa, who never liked me. His spending changed. New clothes, a new watch, an expensive gym membership. Our bedroom started smelling like perfume I didn't own, floral, expensive. When I asked, he said it must be from his jacket brushing against someone at work. He changed his phone passcode from our anniversary date to something random, started keeping his phone face down constantly. He'd leave the room to take calls, claiming it was work stuff. I noticed him helping Natasha carry groceries one afternoon, lingering on the sidewalk, talking and laughing. Another time, his truck was parked near the Harper's house when he'd said he was working late. When I asked, he said he'd stopped by to help Daniel fix something. On my 34th birthday, he showed up 2 hours late with freshly styled hair and no explanation. I sat at the restaurant alone, watching other couples eat, feeling humiliated. Jake, my best friend since I was 16, pulled me aside at his diesel shop and said, "Summer, Michael is acting shady. You're not dumb. Don't act like you don't see it." I told him everything would be fine once the job was done. But what I discovered 4 weeks later would shatter every excuse I'd made. 6 weeks before I found Natasha in my house, I attended one of Robert's family barbecues. I found Michael in a corner of the yard talking to Natasha, heads close together, her hand on his arm, both laughing in that private way that excludes everyone else. When I walked over, both of them shut down. Natasha's hand dropped. She smiled at me, tight, polite, fake, and walked away. I asked Michael what they were talking about. He said, "Work stuff." That same week, I came home early. Natasha's silver sedan was parked in front of my house at 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. Daniel's car was gone. Natasha's car stayed for 3 hours. When I asked Michael if anyone had stopped by, he said no. He'd been home alone all day. I met Jake for carry-out that Friday. I told him about the barbecue, about Natasha's car, about the perfume, and the phone. Jake said, "Summer, you're not dumb. Stop acting like you don't see what's happening." I told him I was planning a trip up north that would fix everything. Jake shook his head. "You can't fix something if you won't admit it's broken." 3 weeks later, my crew finished the manufacturing job 4 days early. I earned the $15,000 bonus. I booked a Friday overnight flight to Chicago, planning to surprise Michael with good news. Instead, the flight got canceled at 11:30 p.m. I landed in Detroit at 2:30 a.m. That's when I found my spare key. That's when I heard, "Babe, I heard the door. I think Summer's ghost is here." After Natasha ran toward her house 3 doors away, I walked into my kitchen and sat down in the darkness. I set the box of cookies on the table in front of me. Brown butter chocolate chip, gift wrapped. A surprise that would never be opened. Michael came downstairs wearing sweatpants. He looked at me sitting at the kitchen table and said, "Summer, I thought you weren't coming back until tomorrow." I didn't respond. He tried. Natasha needed to borrow something. Still nothing. She was upset about work and needed someone to talk to. I looked at him. His face started to crack. I know how this looks. I cut him off. What did she mean when she said Summer's ghost is here? His face went slack. He realized I'd heard everything. The joke. The mockery. Michael started crying. He said we needed to talk in the morning when we were both calm. I said fine. His relief was massive. He thought it meant forgiveness. He didn't understand the difference between pausing and staying. Michael went back upstairs. I sat at the kitchen table for 3 hours. I replayed every neighborhood interaction. Natasha waving from her driveway, chatting at the mailboxes, her car parked outside when it shouldn't have been. I thought about Daniel working night shifts while his wife walked 3 houses down to sleep in my bed. I thought about the ghost joke and realized they'd been doing this long enough to mock my absence. At dawn, I stared down the street at the Harper's house. Lights were on. Daniel was probably getting ready for his shift, having no idea what his wife had done. Natasha's silver sedan was parked in their driveway, exactly where it should be, like nothing had happened. I drove straight to Jake's diesel shop before sunrise. I handed him the box of cookies, still wrapped. Brown butter chocolate chip, gourmet, was supposed to be a surprise. Jake looked at the box, then at me and said, well, at least he has good taste in cookies. He set them on his workbench. Jake provided a checklist. Document everything, lock down accounts, call a lawyer today. By 10:20 a.m., I was sitting with attorney Keisha Brown. She confirmed I owned the house outright and Michael was legally just a guest who could be removed anytime. By noon, I'd transferred $6,000, my half of joint checking, changed every password, and blocked Michael's number temporarily. That evening when I returned home, Michael was panicking. Summer calmly told him she knew who was at the door. Natasha Harper, married, 2 kids, works for his father, lives 3 houses down. She also heard the ghost joke, every word. Michael's face fell. Summer packed a duffel and left for a hotel. As she drove away, she passed the Harper's house and saw Daniel pulling weeds in the front yard, his kids playing on the lawn, completely oblivious. From my hotel room, I processed the neighborhood dimension. Every time I left for a job site, Natasha only had to walk 3 houses down. Every neighborly wave was a lie. The ghost joke looped in my mind, proof they'd been mocking my absence for months. 3 days later, Daniel called. His voice was shaking. We met at a coffee shop on the west side. Daniel looked like he hadn't slept in days. I found messages on Natasha's phone 2 weeks ago, he said. She gaslit me until I doubted my own sanity. Then Robert fired her yesterday. Daniel slid a folder across the table. 6 months of messages between Michael and Natasha. Plans to meet. Jokes about living on the same street. One message from Natasha. She's like a ghost in her own house. We could throw a party and she wouldn't know. I felt physically sick, but also free. That was the moment I stopped blaming myself for every red flag I ignored. Robert called later and apologized. He said he fired Natasha immediately and told Michael his position was no longer secure. You didn't deserve this, Robert said. Daniel didn't deserve this. I returned to my house while Michael was out and changed all the locks for $350. I texted him. Your belongings are in the garage. You have until Sunday at 6 p.m. to collect them. You have no legal claim to this house. An hour later, Michael arrived with Vanessa and pounded on the door. I called the police. An officer arrived, checked the deed, and informed Michael he was legally a guest and must leave when asked. Several neighbors, including Daniel, came out to watch. The officer asked if I wanted to press trespassing charges. I said, not today, but the warning was clear. Try this again and you'll leave in handcuffs. On Sunday, Michael arrived with a rental truck to collect his belongings. Before leaving, he asked if we could talk. I said, no, you made your choice. Now you live with it. Vanessa flipped me off from the passenger seat. I waved. I looked down the street toward the Harper's house. Daniel was standing in his driveway watching too. 2 people who'd been betrayed, reclaiming their street. I raised my hand in a small wave. He waved back. Michael started posting vague messages about toxic relationships and being kicked out for one mistake. Jake commented publicly. One mistake? You want to tell people what that mistake was and how long it lasted? Michael's post disappeared. My business doubled. I hired 2 more electricians and an apprentice. I took on a $500,000 contract. I woke up every morning in my own house and felt peace I hadn't felt in months. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned Michael moved back in with his father. He ended up folding clothes at a retail store. Vanessa eventually ghosted him. I felt nothing when I heard these updates. Just calm indifference. Natasha lost everything. Her career, her house, custody of her kids. Daniel got the house in the divorce and she moved out of the neighborhood entirely. Daniel slowly rebuilt his life. We developed a quiet, supportive friendship. 2 neighbors who reclaimed their street. 4 months later, I ran into Michael in a grocery store. He was in the cereal aisle, looking smaller, thinner, exhausted. He said, "Summer, hi." Silence. "I've been wanting to apologize properly. I miss you." I cut him off. "I don't need your apology, and I don't miss you. You didn't lose me, Michael. You gave me away." His face crumbled. I grabbed my granola and left without looking back. When I drove home that day, I passed Daniel working in his garden. He looked up and waved. I waved back. 2 survivors who chose to stay and rebuild rather than run. 2 people who learned the hard way that the most powerful response to betrayal isn't revenge. It's reclaiming what's yours and refusing to let anyone make you a ghost in your own life. Did you enjoy the story? If so, like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching Revenge with Keisha. See you next time.